It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Mr. Brent, are you there?
I'm here.
Before we get into your story with the Southern Baptist Church, tell us about yourself. Who is Brent? What should we know about you?
Well, I was raised in the South. I had a really good family life. My mom was a dentist. My father was a fireman. I was a good student. I excelled up until a certain point in my life. I graduated Griffin Technical College in computer technology and design. I never followed that career. I bought a hardware store back in the early 90s. Got married, had a daughter, and then my past caught up with me. When I let her know about my past, it just kind of crumbled on from there.
That's like the trauma from your childhood is what came back up, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was a nightmare.
Now, I'm surprised to hear that you say you're from the South. Where'd you pick up that Brooklyn accent from? You don't have. Don't worry, Brent. You don't have to tell us you're from the South. Okay, we can tell. In fact, many people could probably pinpoint exactly what state, and even some what region of that state. Oh boy. Okay. Now we had a long talk yesterday, so I know what happened, man. But give us an idea. What was your first contact and your experience? Because I think the majority of your experience with the Southern Baptist Church has been positive, correct?
Correct. It was. I actually enjoyed it. I played football all throughout my early age, and I was very athletic. I rode motorcycles and three-wheelers. I hunted all growing up. I mean, I had a 22 all the way till I was 12 years old, and it went up from there and started deer hunting. Matter of fact, I was number 93 in my state to have the first gun permit at my age. When I was growing up, it was neat. My father was very good to me. He trained me very well.
So what was your first experience then with the Southern Baptist Church?
I was getting into that.
Right.
The motorcycle riding and the camping and stuff like that. My parents, I was like a latchkey kid. My parents both, my dad worked 24 hours on and he was off 48, and then he played, he was a professional tennis player, Pro A, kind of like Bush League tennis. My mom, she worked long hours as a dentist, and the church filled in those hours. I would go to the church. You know, we would cut grass at the church. We were there on Wednesdays to hear the pastor, you know, and then they would put on Christmas shows. I worked behind the scenes, you know, at the Christmas shows, wearing the little headsets, working on the soundboards and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they call that you attended church whenever the doors were open, right? That's what we used to call. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. I got saved at 11. I took as many notes as I could yesterday.
No, you're fine.
Let's see.
Let me ask you this. I mean, because I know we both had a great experience in the church. I got saved when I was about 29, and again too the same thing. Whenever the doors were open, I was there. But what is your experience with your faith today? It's still very rock solid, correct?
Yes, I'm still a Christian. I just I practice in a different way. Me and my girlfriend are we practice together. More than two. It's her mom, me, and her. We've got our own little way. We do our Bible study. We pray for each other. We just don't go to a church. I feel organized religion is. It invites elements of our society that don't belong there.
Well, and like you said,
especially with our children.
Yeah, where two or more are gathered in my name, I will be there, according to Scripture. So take us back to your experience. I believe it was like with the Royal Rangers, which goes beyond every denomination. We had Royal Rangers too in my Pentecostal church in Las Vegas, and even two in our Pentecostal Assemblies of God church in Staten Island, which is like a Boy Scouts. Yeah. It's like a Boy Scouts type group, right? But it's within the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. We had the white flag with the cross on it, and they were like, you're getting ready for God's army, in your next life. And they taught us things, how to cook underground, bury a roast in the ground with potatoes, onions, that kind of stuff, wrap it in aluminum foil, set a fire on top of it, and come back at the end of the day, and it was ready. Fishing, hunting, compass reading, shooting bow and arrows, 22s. We had I won't say fairly, we had a very wealthy man in Georgia that let us use his land. And he had all those things, motorcycles, big hay bales out there that we could shoot into. We could go camping out there. They were great people. I cannot say anything bad about this man or this family. They were wonderful. They treated us well. The Royal Rangers, when I started getting involved with that, I've really put this in the back of my mind indoors. I'm just opening back up when you had posted that thing. And I joined. Well, my parents joined for me. And I enjoyed it at first. It was kind of a cool thing. There was about 8, maybe 7, 8 of us boys. And we would go out there and ride in the cow pasture on the motorcycles and the 3-wheelers and the 4-wheelers. This was early 80s, maybe late 70s. Let's see, 72, 73, 74, 83, 84, 85. Those years. And
well, why don't we start with this? What was your first indication that everything wasn't going as according that it should? That things seemed odd?
Well, my parents put me in Royal Rangers, and one of the I forget what we called him, but you would call him today like a scoutmaster or a scout leader, maybe an Eagle Scout. He came to our house and met my family. And I had issues in math, and he was a senior in high school or maybe first year in college. And he tutored me in math and got me through my little break in there to help me through math. And he became a magnet to my family. He would come to my house and eat. And these people were wealthy. But he got to where he knew my parents very well, where my parents would trust me with him. And then camping. He would mention camping trips and stuff like that, and he was like, "Well, my father's there. Nothing happens. We're in a gated place. Kids can't get very far. Even if they did get lost, we would find them within a couple of hours." And my dad was all for it. And they signed me up. And this was I was maybe 9 or 10.
Right.
He was into high school wrestling or maybe college wrestling. And he liked to wrestle with kids. I know we didn't go over this yesterday. This is all coming back to me now.
That's fine.
And we wrestled. He taught us how to wrestle. And it got towards the end of it to where it kind of made us feel uncomfortable, and kids were talking off to the side, Well, he would grab me here, touch me there, and it made us feel standoffish. But then he would quit. It was like he knew when we had enough. But that was his way of seeing who would go the farthest, who he could grab there, touch here. And as it progressed, we got to where we were camping. He took us on a camping trip. The first camping trip went great. There was no funny stuff. It was strictly Bible studies at the campfire kind of thing. We did that. And we discussed the Bible up until the early hours of the night, and then, there was 2 of us to a tent, and it was me and my best friend. We're still like brothers today. We went on. We had this. It turned into a Friday night thing. Maybe once every 2 weeks, once a week. They had got to where they wanted us to do this. And my mom was like, "This is too much." And my dad was like, "Well, he's learning skills, for later in life." So they kept me in it. and they thought this guy, could do no wrong. He made me excel in math.
Now, Brent, I'm curious for a second here. Now this a young wrestler guy who helped tutor you and stuff like that. The first time he came to your parents' house to introduce himself, was he wearing the Royal Rangers uniform?
No, he came there. Do you remember those? I'll call them. I'm trying to think who was popular. They were shorts, but they were way high.
Right.
Like those 1970s, 80s.
Yeah, Mark Spitz would wear those really short. Mark Spitz does.
Yeah.
On the cover of the Wheaties. God, what the hell were we thinking back in those days? What were we thinking, man? Yeah.
Exactly. He had those on, and he had on a tank top.
Right. Okay.
And this guy was about 6 foot tall, and I was, I hadn't even hit my growth spurt yet, and my parents thought that was kind of funny. He didn't have the red, the rose uniform, the rose-colored uniform on, or any of that kind of stuff. He came there and he had 3 Christian flags, and he handed my parents that. That was his introduction, or his way into our door.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
well,
those shorts.
Go ahead.
He would. Go ahead.
Well, because I was going to get into the whole stuff, but yesterday you were telling me about being buried in those cardboard boxes. But tell us about the shorts.
Oh yeah, he had came to my house, and he wanted to show my parents that he was into wrestling. He wrestled with me for a little bit, and then he went to the bathroom.
Wow.
He came out, and you could things were obvious back then, and you could see that he was excited. That worried my mom. And my dad was like, no, this guy's not like that. This is a church. And my mom was raised in this church, and she had never had anything. Everything was all cool with her. But she did see that, certain things you can't hide, and especially in the shorts. And it was horrible. I was embarrassed. My dad, he didn't know what to think, but he still, it's through the church things happen. But it wasn't, he didn't do anything wrong to me during that period. But that was his way of showing them, look, I can wrestle, we do this, we'll teach them wrestling, fishing, that kind of stuff, survival skills.
Right.
He went over, telling them we read the Bible, we go camping, we teach them how to pitch a tent, literally. It was a fairly good introduction. I mean, they had this down. We wasn't his first class,
right?
Or him and his father. That we wasn't their first class. The church had this thing going for I guess Royal Rangers had been going on for years. I don't know how many years, but
Let me ask you this. Besides their involvement in the Royal Rangers, did they have other titles or other responsibilities at the church?
Well, they would like set the prayers out on Sunday. They were ushers. You got to think this church is humongous. It's really big. And it takes a lot of volunteers and even paid staff to pull this off, to pull a Wednesday and a Sunday off.
Sure.
On Saturdays, they would deliver meals to the old folks. They were, or you would think that they were perfect people. On the outside, they were perfect. I mean, great, but get them around kids, and it was a nightmare. They had taken us camping. We had went camping, and talking about the cardboard boxes, where they buried us in the cardboard boxes. It was that we were going to be born again into the Royal Rangers. So they stick these cardboard boxes, you know, they look like water heater boxes or maybe refrigerator boxes. And they would put two boys in each hole, and they'd put it over our head. I mean, it wasn't anything to get out. It was, you know, maybe a 6 inches, 7 inches of dirt over the top of the boxes, and we just crawled our way out of it. And when you got out, you were a born again Christian. In other words, you left all of your past in the hole, and you came out and you rised back up, and that was the way that Jesus is going to bring you back.
And that's fascinating. Almost like a water baptism, but this was a baptism in soil, but very unusual. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't think anything about it being kids. I mean, because we knew we were going to die. Jesus brings you back from your coffin, or from however you are, your soul, your ashes to ashes, dust to dust kind of thing. You come back to life. Jesus brings you back, and you go to heaven, or however they were explaining it to us. I don't quite remember the way that they explained it to us, but I was putting it together last night and remembering all this stuff. Things were coming back to me, and it was odd. It was very odd. I mean, we had tiki torches, you know, that lit up the area. They had decided, I think we were maybe 11 or 12. No, 11, 10 or 11. They had taken us camping. They had gotten familiar, and we were comfortable being around them. The touchy-feely things had kind of stopped for a while, and they had a group of kids. And when you got 10 kids, maybe 8, you know, you got to pick. If you're going to do something, you pick 2. When there's 2 of them there. And I guess we were the 2 kids that they figured would go along with their plan.
Well, let me stop you for a couple of seconds here. Now, first of all, the only 2 adults there were this father and his son.
Correct.
Those are the leadership there. They didn't have any helpers or any other chaperones or any other type of people helping them?
No, sir. No, sir.
And when you say to me, well, they chose me and my friend, they picked us out of this group. How do you know that? How do you know that they weren't also isolating two other groups of kids? You would have no way of knowing that. They could have been isolating all these groups, and these other duos are walking around now thinking they're the only ones who were targeted.
Well, you're right. You're right. And this wasn't the only trip that this happened. This was the one that I remember that kind of scared me as a kid. I don't want to go in too much of a depth of it, but I won't leave your mind too much to think about. They gave us compass and a map, and we had to follow, there would be like a golf flag in the middle of the woods, and you start off, they would drop you off in the either in the cow pasture or there at the corner of the woods at the lake, and they would give you a compass and a map, and they'd say, all right, we had been learning how to read a compass and a map, and then you would go by and you would find a golf flag, and there would be like a trinket in there, depending on how many kids. There would be a trinket in there, maybe a cold soda, a flashlight, things like that would be in right there at that golf flag. So you pick up that trinket, and then that leads you to the next spot. You could follow your map and your compass, and you go to the next spot. It was basic land navigation. We got back to camp, me and my buddy, and the other kids were still doing their thing. They knew exactly where they were at. You could see flashlights moving around inside the woods.
Gotcha.
And there was a big bonfire out there, so the kids couldn't get lost. I mean, you could see the bonfire over the hill. So if they did get lost, all they had to do was look at that bonfire and walk to the bonfire, and they were, right back where they started from. But they wanted us to learn the land navigation. And me and my buddy had practiced this at home, and with my dad being a fireman and former military or guard, he knew, and he would teach us at home, and we got pretty good at it. And plus, I was a hunter. I knew what I was doing. So we finished pretty quick. And my friend, I keep wanting to say his name. We'll call him John for now.
If you do, we can always cut it out. It's the same thing as the other problem.
Yeah. Him and the father, he's not a father, he's a monster. Mm-hmm. Him and the old man disappeared, and I was left with the son. And back then, I think it was a Bronco. It was like the first year the Ford Bronco or a Blazer came out, and the old man drove that. And I remember the Fiat Spider that the boy drove because I thought it was a cool car. It was really a piece of junk, but I thought it was a cool car. They put us in those cars. And, they turned, he turned on music and stuff like that. And I remember they had cold drinks in those cars. And it was my first introduction to alcohol. And that was those Bartles and James. I remember that specifically because it had like those fruit things floating in them.
Now that's interesting because you did mention that yesterday, that the Bartles and James, which are wine coolers, had some fruit floating in them. But you know what? The Bartles and James that come from the store, they didn't have fruit in them. This wasn't, that had to be added in later. Did you know that?
I had no idea. I mean, all I remember is seeing the like little fruit floating in them. It was like peach flavored or orange flavored Bartles and James. They poured it in a cup, and you could see the little oranges float, or not orange. It was like chopped up fruit.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because they definitely added that fruit, man. Because that stuff didn't come with fruit included. It was wine coolers. It was just like any kind of liquid cooler. But that's something to put on the shelf there for a while. So they were also, that's the first time you ever had alcohol. You're about 9 or 10 years old, 10 or 11, and they're giving you alcohol and they're keeping you in these cars. One more thing to consider. Quickly, one more thing to consider, too, is because we're about the same age. I'm about 10 years older than you. And so when we were kids and we went out camping and stuff like that, we didn't have, like, a case of bottled water where you could go drink. No, believe it or not, no one thought of that back in those days. Hey, maybe these kids are going to get thirsty. They'd give you a can of soda. Like you said, it was a Little League game. You'd be playing all day long. They'd give you a can of soda if you were lucky. Someone bought a can of soda from the hot dog stand. So, okay, so so now they got a hold of you. They got you in these cars, and they're applying you with alcohol. You've never had alcohol before. So give us an idea of what's going on now. And dying of thirst, too. You're chugging those things down because you're dying of thirst. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And it was good, I mean, and then it was kind of like, hey, I'm sneaking, They were like, don't tell nobody, because if you tell, we're going to say that that you brought these. So that was our secret. But yeah, I drank 2 of them down, and I was, I was plowed.
Sure.
I had never drank before. I didn't even know what alcohol was. I was loosened up, I guess, and he spilt his on me, and he had a change of clothes in his car. We had all came with a change of clothes for the next morning, so I had a change of clothes. He was like, go ahead and change your clothes. I didn't think anything about it. I went ahead and changed my clothes, and he was like, wait a minute. You got to change, your underpants, everything, you don't want to go home. I don't want your parents, smelling booze on you. We'll wash your clothes in the lake like you went swimming. So I was like, okay, turn your back. So he was like, no, I'll help you out. Well, he did everything he could to, nature happens.
Right.
And he was like, you're going to be a big guy. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you're going to grow up, you're going to be a big guy when you get about 14 or 15 years old. He said, you're going to grow up, you're going to be strong. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know how to answer or rebuttal any kind of question. I just let him talk. Well, I don't know how to say this, Ed. It happened.
Okay.
And that was the first time.
It's amazing how this young guy, if you said like he just started college or he could have been a senior in high school, how he was this adept at manipulation. You know, like he had to have learned that someplace. You know, I don't think he would come up with this on his own, and you obviously couldn't have been the first person that he took advantage of, because he was too calculated in all this from the very, very start, from the first time he went to your parents' house. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't clumsy. He wasn't. Right. You know, everything was, it was almost like a script from a book. You know, as, you know, I've told my wife and my girlfriend now, and they're like, they found this in a book or something. This is, like you said, too calculated.
Right.
After I had got my underwear back on and everything, I was ashamed, and my buddy was out there at the fire, and he was ashamed. He was in tears. Mm-hmm. And the other guys, they were all at the fire, and everybody had came back, and they were sitting around the fire talking, and my buddy John, he had changed his clothes also. And I went up to him, and I was like, what happened? He goes, I can't tell you. He goes, it's a secret. He goes, I promised. And then he goes, I'll tell you tomorrow. And like I said, we were like brothers. We grew up together from kids, from real tiny kids. And the other fella, we'll call him Jack. He was in the father's truck also after Lee was in there. Jack was in there, and so there was 3 drunk kids. And I asked him, I said, did you get that Sprite with fruit floating in it or whatever that thing was? And he was like, yeah. He goes, I drank 3 of them. And he was sick.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 of those wine coolers made him sick. And I was like, well, I had 2 of them. And this was, you know, after the middle of the night, and then they would come around and check on each tent, you know, periodically through the night, make sure everybody was okay. And the son crawled in the tent with me and John. The father crawled in the tent with Jack, and whoever was in the tent with him, I know the other guy's name, but that's he. I don't think he had anything to do with it, or if he did, he never said anything.
But Brent, there's no way that the father and son that were doing the abuse couldn't have known that the other one was also doing this. They were in cahoots.
Right.
There's no way. Right.
So the son had came in the tent with us, And he got down to his underwear, and we were wearing tennis shorts and a tank top. And he got down to his underwear. And he would roll on one side, you know, and me and John had a sleeping bag, you know, laid across the floor, and then we had another sleeping bag that was our cover. And this was early spring, so January, February, late February, maybe early March. That this had went on. It was still cold at night. And, you know, he would throw his arm over you like he was cuddling. You know, it was all strange. Anyway, the next time, me and John had went home, spoke about this, and made a pact. You know, we're never going to talk about what happened. This is it. We're never going to talk about this again.
And again, Brent, at the time, we didn't have like commercials on TV warning us about this, saying, "Hey, tell a parent." We didn't have even teachers and doctors, and we didn't have that mandatory reporting laws where there were mandatory reporting. Because back in those days, you could go to an adult and say, "Hey, man, something weird's happening here," and they would say, "Okay, well, just don't tell anybody." You know, it was a whole completely different world back in those days.
It sure was. I mean, we were trusted in the woods with guns when we were that age.
Right.
I mean, we went squirrel hunting.
Yeah, and even this business of letting the kids run out in the woods by themselves with their flashlights and saying, they'll be okay. Hey, what if a battery went dead, man? You know what I mean? Yeah. What if one of these kids dropped his flashlight and didn't pick it up? You know, these are all considerations. Yeah. But the thing is, now, Brent, we are running out of time, though, okay? So now, there were other occasions, again, where these adults were able to abuse you?
Yes. One other time, we had went one more time, and actually we thought we were going to have new Royal Ranger leaders.
Right.
We thought that somebody else, but it turned out it was these same guys. And this time, they wanted to teach us how to escape being tied up. You know, with clothes hangers. They would wrap our hands in clothes hangers. And we were in those shorts, you know, and they wrapped us up in clothes hangers, and they put us in the back of that Bronco thing, Blazer, whatever that car thing was.
Well, let me ask you, Brent, then this would be, they would take a wire clothes hanger and wrap them around your, I guess they would put your wrists together like a cross, behind your back or in front of you?
It was in front.
Okay, and they were
tight.
They would have to take like a pair of pliers to tighten those up, or they use their hands?
They use their hands.
Okay, now what about your legs, too? Were your legs also bound with these? Yeah, okay, fascinating. Mm-hmm. Okay, fascinating.
Yeah. We were basically hog-tied.
Right.
With clothes hangers. And this was the following year, because we had graduated. We had one cross on our flag, so this was getting our second cross on our flag. Was escaping, being able to get out of their car, being tied up. And we didn't think anything about it. We just thought that this was, you know, magic trick or something. Because they made it friendly. But Jack wasn't there. You know, our regular band of guys wasn't there. This was me and John and maybe 2 other guys. I can't remember them. I never saw them again. But I was in the back of the Bronco, and the son was there with me. And this time it was, the same thing, Bartles and James. I guess they thought kids liked those things that we did.
Yeah, sure. No, but the thing is, now, you were bound in these wire hangers while he was feeding you the Bartles and James?
Sure, yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating.
We were drinking these things through straws. They would pour them in. I don't guess it was a solo cup back then. I don't know, but they had ice in it. It was a cold drink.
Yeah.
And this was a summertime thing, middle of the summer. They got us in these wire things, and we finally escaped out of them. And we got by the fire, and the father and the son had, I don't know where they had went, but me and him got really freaked out, and we jetted. We split. This wasn't going to happen again. And we ran. And didn't run until we hit, it was like a valley in the woods, like a creek bed. And we stayed there. And I guess they had half the church out looking for us. And we started walking. As soon as the moon came up, we started walking. And we hit one of the main roads, and one of the guys that was searching for us happened to own the property. And he scooped us up. And you could smell the booze. And he took us back, and he was like, "You can't tell your parents about this because we don't want anybody to, we want to keep using this land. This land is for teaching you guys about mentorship, leadership." And that's what we were supposed to be learning. But this had nothing to do with leadership or mentorship. Little kids getting pictures taken of them around the fire, after swimming, drying out in their underwear. That's just not it. It's pervert 101,
Quick question. Now, you mentioned to me earlier that when he first went to your parents' home, he assured them, "Don't worry, because if the kids get lost, we find them in a couple of hours." So do you think there were other kids that had ran for their lives before you guys ran for your lives?
I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure.
Now, when you said half the church was out there looking, as you grew up over the years, did the church elders come to you and said, you son of a gun, I was out there till 3 o'clock in the morning looking for you, trying to find you that night? Did they remember? Was this a known thing that people would remember going out there looking for you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Especially the one that found us. That was his property.
Gotcha. Okay, now, I know we've talked off the air. How have you dealt with this in your life? Have you experienced severe trauma throughout your life from these incidents as a child?
Sure. Well, it destroyed my marriage. I like I said, I owned a hardware store, and it was very successful. But I would hit points in my life to where, those memories would come back, and I would just have to close myself off to the world. And I had girls that ran the hardware store for me, and they would run the hardware store, and I'd be like, "Look, I can't come in today." it was, and my buddy was the same way. We went through many, many, many relationships. We didn't know which way to go. I went through therapy from the age of 21, and I'll be 50 next month. So, and I'm still in therapy.
Well, happy birthday when it's coming up. Let me ask you. I got to sneak that one in, man. Happy birthday, my friend. Now, what has become, because I know, but I want the audience to know, what has become of this father and this son today?
Well, the son became a deputy sheriff when he, I guess, graduated or got later on in life. He became a deputy sheriff. He lost his job because two kids were brave enough to go to their parents, and he was showing, CP to those kids and taking pictures of those kids watching CP. And the parents, that settled out of court, but the parents didn't want him to be a sheriff deputy, so they went to the sheriff after the civil trial, and he was fired. And now I can't find him on the internet anywhere. If he's on the internet, he's on the deep web and running an alias.
Yeah, we can find him. We'll find out where he is. That's no big deal.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Now, how about when you and your friends were around that campfire? Any child pornography photos, films shown to you?
No.
So
no.
That came later then. That came later.
Yeah, that came later and all.
Now, what about his father? Any justice come of his father? Anybody ever take his father to?
No.
Nothing.
No, nothing. And his father is a big company in the United States. His father is a executive.
Okay, I know this is we've gone over time, but now is there anything I haven't asked you that you really want the audience to know?
Watch your children.
Ugh, so true.
Male or female, watch your children, because these drinks, especially the things that they can put in them now, even if your child is, you think your child is would tell you something, they're ashamed. They will never tell. They'll keep it till their grave. And it took a lot. I thought about it a long time when you posted that up.
Yeah.
And it was time for me to tell my story, me and my buddy have held that pact until this day. We talk about it together, but we do not. We've never told anybody anything.
Well,
you're the first.
Yeah, I haven't checked the statute of limitations, the criminal statute of limitations in your state. I know what state you live in. And, man, hopefully we can even get criminal charges against these guys, which would be well-deserved, And one thing is said about kids, once they've been through this trauma, not telling anybody, they don't even want to tell themselves. You go into denial. You don't want to believe it really happened. Maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe we're making this up. Maybe we imagined it. You just so many self-preservation tactics come in psychologically to cocoon you, to shelter you from that trauma. Mr. Brent, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Like I said, I know how rough it is, man, and I know tonight's not going to be any easier, and I know tomorrow's not going to be any easier for you, too. But yeah, we thank you, because this is so important, man. This is so important that we can advance these efforts to bring these people to justice, man. So I thank you again.
Yes, sir. Organized religion is something that people need. You really need to pick your church. If you're going to go to church, please know everybody that's in there. If you have to, you can. It's as easy as a Google search or a DuckDuckGo to look somebody up. If they're on that list,
and
if they've ever been caught.
Even if they're not, if you have a bad feeling about somebody, just keep your kids away from them. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. To err on the side of caution is nothing to be embarrassed. And again, too, in your parents' defense, back in those days, we had no idea. There wasn't all this stuff. We just didn't know.
Yep.
Brent,
exactly.
Brent, thank you so much, man. We are out of time once again. Thank you again.
All right, Ed. If you want to do a part 2 or you have any more follow-up questions or anything you think about, you're welcome to call.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Good night.